And it's time for today's main event, the Open Forum Q&A with HUD staff. This webinar is an opportunity for NSP grantees and partners to ask questions and solve NSP problems through discussion with the NSP program managers and your peers. NSP grantees and affiliates have the opportunity to ask questions about the expenditure deadline, program design, rules and regulations, eligible uses, other federal requirements, and any other current issues of interest. This webinar is for all NSP grantees and their partners. So with us today are familiar voices of the managers of NSP from HUD headquarters in Washington, D.C. We've got John Laswick, David Noguera, and Hunter Kurtz. And so with us is an NSP program for Enterprise Community Partners, and that's Walter Howell. Hello to all of you.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So, hey, Walter. So, welcome to this question and answer session. We are celebrating today because 54 of the 56 NSP2 grantees have broken through the spending barrier of 50%, and we're really thrilled with that rate of success. It's over 96% of the grantees have made the mark. There are two that we're going to be meeting with, and I say that one of them had some problems late in the game, and the other one didn't get started very fast, but has been tearing it up lately. So, and that's the state of Michigan. So, we're kind of focusing on next year, and we're going to see if we can get in a position to consult with those two and talk about how they get to 100%, and if we can feel like it's going to happen, we'll continue to work with them on it. But going over the 50%, in effect, we have told Congress that we have spent half the money in the first 2 years, and so in aggregate, and so you all deserve credit for that. It's been a tough time. People have been really scrambling to make numbers with deals falling apart at the last minute, and it's been sort of anxiety. So we appreciate everything that you've done. I'd like to thank our TA providers as well, and especially our field staff who are out there working with you day to day, try to get the projects done and them done, not just spend money, but do it right and get good results in the neighborhoods. So again, this is great. So Kent, I think instead of those little phones, we're going to have little champagne glasses, and we'll have a little toast. We're going to
Terrific.
mute everybody's champagne glass and drink a little electronic toast to all those great NSP2 grantees that have crossed the line. So it's quite an accomplishment.
Sure.
Yeah. So this year we raised the possibility of additional funding, although we think the chances are pretty low. But as we planned for next year and this for this year and next year, we realized that at this time next year, all the NSP2 grants must be fully expended, all the NSP1 grants must be fully expended, and NSP3 grants have to be at 50%. So it's going to be an active year for us, and we are hoping that people can maintain something close to the level of productivity that has got us here. We do have some additional money that's now been approved, and David's going to talk about that, but that will be rolling out, and one of the problems we've had is that we can't reach the new NSP3 grantees that don't already have a contract with us or a CDBG grant or a NSP grant, and there's about 60 of them without one or the other, so we have not been able to get TA to that group, and so we're anxious to do so.
Yeah. So yeah, there's actually 30 non-entitlement communities that are exclusively receiving NSP3 funds, and there's another 17 or so grantees that may have been entitlement communities under CDBG, but hadn't previously received NSP funds. Now, we're already a year into the 3 program of NSP 3, and it's been unfortunate. But our travel funds have been limited to just having those NSP 1 and 2 grantees, and our TA funds have been limited to just serving those NSP 1 and 2 grantees. So we've been at a disadvantage, and we realize that those of you who are new NSP 3 grantees have also been at a disadvantage. One of the things that we're going to be doing to start our support for those NSP 3 grantees is looking to our TA providers to do on-call assessments with those new grantees and try to get a good sense of how best we should be using these TA funds. One nice thing we have with the new TA funds is that it doesn't have to be spent in a specific time period, right? So we're hoping that means that we can be with you for a while as you're generating program income, as you're designing your programs, as you're executing it. We can be with you to support you throughout the process. We have a number of clinics, problem-solving clinics, that we're preparing to do. We have a training plan that we'll be rolling out for our NSP grantees. And hopefully through these individual assessments on phone conference call assessments, we'll be able to figure out other types of assistance that we can offer. We do want to help the new grantees as best we can.
So the new grantees are clustered in the same areas where we are already used to. Although we have a small cluster in the Atlanta area, and then the Midwest, Michigan and Ohio, and then California and Arizona. So, for example, it might be possible to do some sort of small group things with the new grantees in those areas, so that we have some kind of peer learning and that sort of thing going on. So we're open to your suggestions for what sorts of things would be most useful to you. We are also upgrading our data, and I think we've sent a notice to anybody to try to sort of take a test drive on the Google-powered search engine that we're trying out instead of the previous search engine. So we're trying to keep those of you who've been with us for a while kind of keep making the information more accessible, easier to find, and that sort of thing. So we're trying to keep improving the way around. We have a team retreat next week to kind of think about some other new ways of getting involved. And then Hunter is, of course, scheduling webinars into the next few months and has a really interesting little series he wanted to talk about that's coming up in, starts the end of March or mid-March?
Yeah, at the end of March we're going to try something a little different than we have in the past webinars. We're going to do 4 webinars in a series revolving around disposition, marketing, and land banking. Basically, with the NSP properties you currently have that you've rehabilitated and maybe have some difficulties trying to get rid of. So it's going to be 4 series, or 4 webinars. They will be standalone, but they will also sort of intertwine with each other. First one's going to look at the rules and regulations of disposition as well as marketing strategies. Then we're going to follow that up with a webinar on land banking and scattered site rental. And then the final webinar will be a sort of table discussion with some grantees and some of the folks presented, the experts from the other webinars, the 3 webinars, just talking about these strategies and how to work together and use them as various sort of pieces, if you will, to complete the puzzle. So you can start look forward to that, say, on March 20th and going through the middle of April.
Great. I know a lot of people have been asking about the closeout rules, and we are working on those. Jesse has done quite a bit of drafting already, and David and Jennifer and I are kind of picking up from there and trying to get something that looks at what happens after closeout, and then that gets into some related questions on program income. You know, how do you treat program income, and land banking. You know, we're not used to closing CBG grants out, and so, you know, this is a little bit of new territory for us. Obviously, the vast majority of the grantees we have in NSP have some connection to the CDBG program, and so there will probably be some kind of linkage there, but that's not true for 100% of you. So, you know, it is an active that we're working on, and we know there are a lot of questions. I think that I don't think anybody's going to be frustrated. I mean, I think, you know, the discussion's going is, I think, is practical and manageable, and, you know, not the sudden departures from the way that we've been doing things. So if you can, you know, sort of with us a little bit longer, we have to describe how to deal with land banking. It's been one of those things that we've been able to put off for a while, but you know, as we've attended to other business, but that's coming up, and we're trying to anticipate it. So so I think where we are here at quarters, we really are feeling very happy about the NSP 2 results. The way of looking at that is that in NSP 1, with the 18-month obligation deadline, we had 99.7% of the funds obligated. In our case, in NSP 2, we actually went over the requirement. And in NSP 1, we also had 96.4% of the grantees that made it. There were a handful, about 11, that did not make the actual deadline. So, you know, but I think 96% in you know, in a government program where there's a lot of features and a lot of crazy market conditions is a heck of an accomplishment. So Kent, you want to open up the gates to questions?
Sure thing. Yep. Ready to take questions now, and we've got a couple of them already. And let me just remind you how to do this. You can submit them in writing, and you can also raise your hand, and the raise hand button is right underneath the participant list. And just a reminder that even if you submit in writing, and it's nice to see those questions ahead of time, that if I can unmute you to ask your question verbally, I will. So let's go now to Hillary, and let me unmute you, Hillary. You were the first in the queue. Hi.
Hi. A question. There's a new kind of proposal that's being discussed, looking at whether we could get some banks to potentially donate some foreclosed single-family homes, and then just using the NSP 3 funds to rehab the homes. So my questions are, one, if the property's donated, could we use the NSP 3 funds just for the rehab portion of those properties? And then if the answer is yes, if we look at reselling those homes, how do we evaluate the price on resale, since the acquisition cost would technically be zero? Could we only resell it for the cost of the rehab, or could we somehow recoup the value of the donated property and use it as program income?
All right, thanks. Thanks for running in ahead of time, because it gave me a little time to think about it. I was just telling you, I remember talking to you back in the pre-NSP 1 day, so we're still Amazing.
Yeah, so far.
Well, Utah State, you're still in the right?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, the property can be donated if it's vacant or foreclosed or abandoned. It's eligible to be used in the program. So, I don't imagine they're going to donate an occupied property. So, minimum, I would think that it's going to qualify under eligible use E, and then and you everything you want to do under eligible use E. Now, there's a couple little sort of twists on the valuations, but it's not as big of a deal if somebody's donating the property to you. And we've had this question before, and you can estimate a value. You could get an appraisal for the as-is price of the property, and then use that in your determination of the sales price, understanding that your price can't be the lower of cost or the appraised value, but you have to put the cost in at zero.
Okay.
And then the reason, as you already pointed out, is that you recoup that value and it becomes program income, and it lets you do more houses. So I know that Paul said that we could look that way.
Okay.
Habitat's had some donations in different places too.
Okay, so we could just use just to make it clear, we could get donated properties. We could just use the NSP3 on the rehab side, and we could somehow get the value of the donation when determining that sales price, and we would just do either a resale or a recapture agreement.
Yeah, you also, the third limitation you have on the sales price is how much the family can afford. So you might not get everything you want, but so you don't want to sort of put an overly optimistic valuation on the property that's coming into you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and another analogy to this is with some multifamily. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's this developer-driven deals where the developers own the property prior to the NSP program. It's a vacant property. It's appropriate for the program. They bring it in. They can't use the NSP funds to purchase the property or to reimburse themselves for the purchase price, but they can use the NSP funds to rehab it, and then they get their money back on the purchase price when they sell it or refinance it. And that's kind of what you're doing too, except on the single family side. So as long as the money stays in the program and not overcharging the buyers, you should be fine.
Okay, great. Great. I guess now we just need some banks to donate some property. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hillary.
I know. I'm saying that you can set the price of it.
And next up, and let me get this out. Next up, we've got Overton, and let me unmute Overton. How are you calling from?
Virginia. I'm with Habitat for Humanity of Virginia. We're based in Richmond, and we're doing NSP work in several parts of the state. We're an NSP1 developer, and we get NSP1 funds from our state. We pay our state program income each time we sell an NSP1 house. If state chooses to do so, they continue to recycle that program income into NSP1 uses after the end date of NSP1 in 2013.
Well, it may not have a lot of choice over it. Those are the kind of questions we're going to be dealing with when we finalize this closeout notice. But I would anticipate that a public entity like a state or a city or county is going to be treating the income as either CDBG or NSP or some combination of the two, pretty much perpetuity, the same way they do with CDBG program income now. When you say you're a developer, a development agreement as opposed to a subrecipient agreement, or you just mean you develop housing but you're a subrecipient of the state? kind of a...
Well, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't know the definitions. I know the state started off calling us a subrecipient, and now they call us a developer.
Well, okay. I mean, so there's two levels of this program income. I mean, if it comes back to the state, and it's their option since they're the grantee. If it comes back to the state, then chances are it will continue to be program income to some program for the foreseeable future. They have the option of allowing you or other subrecipients or developers to retain that. If it's a developer, if it's a pure developer situation, it's technically not program income, although many places do still negotiate the return of some or all the funds, as a condition of the deal. So what I'm saying is, the money can be spent as program income either at the subrecipient level or at the state level, and that's all open to negotiation. But
okay.
I don't think that wherever it is, wherever it stays, it's still going to be NSP money pretty much until it's
well, that's very good news, because in the beginning of this, our understanding was that at the end date in 2013, the program income would go back to HUD.
Fine. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. That got changed. The law changed a couple of years ago. So really, the Housing and Economic Recovery Act did require funds to come back to HUD, but that was I think in the Recovery Act they said we pointed out to Congress that it was really going to be difficult to make that work, and they changed it. So
the state will, given that we have this agreement that creates program income, the state will decide whether they want to continue using it for NSP or for other CDBG eligible activities.
Well, like I say, we haven't decided that yet, but those are the two major options.
So there's a chance that it won't be available for NSP because of HUD's decision.
Yes.
And we do need to do some planning. When will we know?
We have to know for OMB's purposes by June. So I would like to get it published next month. I'm hoping we can make that happen. So that's what we're shooting for. I need to plan, and that's a fair question. I think it's, for planning purposes, there aren't that many differences between CG and NSP in the sense that, NSP is kind of the icing on the CDBG cake or something like that. And so you can do new construction, you can do land banking, you have higher income limits. There's a few places where you have some more flexibility, and then there's some places where you have less flexibility. You can't do as many kinds of things. So I think what we hope we can get approved is some sort of a hybrid that would be the best of both worlds. But this being government, I can't promise that. So
thank you.
Thanks, Overton. And let's see. Next up, we've got Chris, and let me unmute you. Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Calling from?
We're doing work in Minneapolis and St. Paul through NSP1 and NSP2. I have a question of calculating the proportion of NSP-assisted units in a multifamily rental project.
Okay.
We are...
Back up a little bit?
Sure. We're acquiring and rehabbing fourplexes.
Okay.
And one example is a fourplex where about 40% of the total development cost is being paid for by NSP.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the calculation, we were assuming that 40%, in this case half, two of the units would be NSP assisted.
Right.
And the city that we're working with is saying that in NSP2, we have to get all the units as being NSP assisted because of the application that they wrote to HUD.
Okay. Well, we might need to, talk to them about the details, but we did buy an actually sort of open option probably after they applied for NSP2. because this problem, I don't think we solved this until the NSP 3 notice or the NSP combined notice last October, and so we basically allow both the CDBG or the home approach. And as far as HUD's concerned, I think you could do 2 units or and I don't know what the alternative would be, but he does the grantee does have this sort of additional responsibility to produce a certain number of units, or to to deliver units in a certain way. You may be able to talk to them and say, look, you don't do it this way in order to accomplish your objectives, or you do have to do it that way, and so I think some flexibility, but I know a lot of places are worried about meeting their minimum 100 units, and there's a lot of places worried about sort of being faithful to what was said in the application, and it's a competitive application. But it is possible to amend an NSP2 application or grant award, and for something like this, we see that you're going to end up in the same place, but there's an easier route to that place. Then we've been supportive of those kind of requests. So I think what we ought to do is, maybe have your folks talk to the field office there in Minneapolis, and then we can get together with them on a phone call or something, and just see what these are, what the constraints are, and if there's any options for them.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And let's go now to Anne, who is seeking some clarification on the answer that went to Hillary in Nevada. Hi, Anne.
Hi. I basically didn't understand. It sounded like you could treat the appraised value of the donated property as if it were a development cost, calculating the lower of the total development cost minus holding cost versus the appraised value. There wasn't an actual cost, and I just wanted to make sure I understood that correctly.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. And David's been a little nervous as I was answering that, but I remember talking to Paul about this, Paul Webster, because there's this other prohibition that we kind of get twitchy about that says you can't pay yourself more than the donated, like if you have tax foreclosed property and you're the Hennepin County or somebody, that you can't reimburse yourself for anything more than the transaction costs, basically. That's only for tax foreclosed properties. What happens with these donated properties is that, let's say the price of the house is, the value of the house is $30,000, and then it's going to cost you $50,000 to rehab it. Well, then if you come in and say, well, we didn't pay anything for the house, and we have to sell for no more than $50,000, then you're really deflating the values in the neighborhood. You're inappropriately, valuing the house. I mean, it's the house has value. Just because you didn't pay for it doesn't mean it doesn't have value.
How do we get to that based on what these rates?
Well, so how we get to that based on the regs is that you use some form of appraisal or other acceptable method if it's less than $25,000 worth value, and that becomes part of the total development cost, and then rather than zero. So maybe it's $10,000, maybe it's $20,000, $30,000, but nobody's getting enriched as a result of this, because that money's coming back into the program. But at the same time, you're treating this as a more this is a much more realistic pricing of something like this, because we're all over the place that appraisers are having trouble getting to the values that we think are there in SP rehabbed houses, because the surrounding property values are so low. And if we come in and sort of inappropriately down the values even further, we're just making the problem worse. So So I think it's legitimate to take that imputed value, and that you would want to have some documentation, some verification of that. It wasn't just a number that you make up, but so in other words, get an appraisal, and then I think you can use that number.
Well, that's great. I need to apologize to one of our subrecipients because I fussed at them for selling a house for slightly more than the development cost because the property had been donated, and I told them it couldn't be counted. So I'm with apologizing.
All right. Well, I'm sorry if we weren't clear about that.
No. I mean, I think that's beneficial for everybody. So, thank you very much.
Okay.
Well, thanks, Ann. And next up, let's go to Rocio. And did I get that right? Is it Rocio?
That's right.
Hi. Where are you calling from?
City of Miami Beach.
Great.
Go ahead.
Oh, I posted the question. Well, we are forecasting our budget, and it looks like we're going to have unspent admin funds at the end of our program. And the question is, can we draw down those funds and use them for continuing monitoring of these projects?
That's a good question. Now, this is another one of those things that we're going to need to deal with in the closeout rules. But I mean, it would be program income, and now I think that we would recognize that as it would be like program income probably because you still have money left because you've got program income that's taken the place, or it's part of your.
They were admin funds. They were assigned as our admin funds.
Okay. So you haven't expended them? Well, you have to expend an amount equal to your grant by next. Well,
what deadline?
Yeah, by next spring if you're an NSP 1 or 2 grantee. So if you've gotten some program income and that's offset, and the reason you still have money in your line of credit is just because you've been spending program income first.
Is that what your situation is?
No, actually, no. We don't have program income. The projects that we acquired and modeled were remodeled below our budget. So the portion that was allocated for administration have not used all of it.
Yeah, I can't say for sure, but I think that we're going to have to figure something out for those kind of situations. I mean, we know there's a need for ongoing monitoring of projects, continued affordability, maybe communities have land banks and that sort of thing. But in your case, I was thinking in most cases, grantees have program income that they've offset, and therefore what's left is actually program income. It isn't really grant funds, and so I think we have a little more flexibility there, but you haven't fully expended the amount that your grant, then I'm not sure we can just leave that someplace.
You got to get to an amount equal to 100% of your initial allocation, whether it be from drawing down your line of credit or some combination of program income in your line of credit. You're saying you're only going to be at 90 or 90+% because of the fact that there are admin funds you haven't drawn down. Then you're probably going to want to look at some expenditures, either diverting some of that to activities that you're carrying out, or whatever you're currently using to fund your admin, make some adjustments to use those funds, right? I mean, what John is talking about is once you have money coming back to you through program income, but it sounds like you're not there yet.
We won't be because the developer is going to be keeping his program income.
Right.
So we do not foresee any program income in the future.
So what funding are you using for staff salaries and overhead?
we were granted 6.8% of the total grant for admin funds.
Okay. And you won't quite spend all that whole 6.8?
We won't spend that much, no.
Well,
we are going to have a certain amount. We have an amount left over.
Subgrantee of the state, or are you a direct HUD grantee?
We're a subgrantee of the state.
Okay.
That could be considered activity delivery.
Yeah,
and the specific question is, let's say we're going to have $200,000 left over by the end of this year. Can we draw that down and use it to pay for salaries for next year? And that's the specific question.
You need to pay for salaries through the end of the program year, but at the end of your program. But there's probably some ways to deal with this. But I agree with David. I think you might rather go out and do a house that rehab a house and sell it for $200,000 and turn that admin money into program income and have a little more flexibility with it. I don't want to be this devious on a conference call, but I mean, you're not the only grantee in that situation by far. I mean, and hats off to you for not spending 6.8%. But now we recognize that this is sort of an unfunded liability, an unfunded mandate to continue affordability or keep looking at land banks or any number of things beyond the grant period. So we got to figure some ways to be as helpful as possible in using those funds. But I don't have the answer today. But you want to answer that question. There's a whole bunch of people asking it.
Okay. Then I'll look forward to that then. Thank you.
Worst comes to worst, let me give you my bank account number.
Oh boy.
Thanks, Rocio.
Thank you.
Very good. All right. Who's next? We've got, it looks like, Nia. And you're Nia. Hello, where are you calling from?
I'm here in Tallahassee. I didn't really have a question. I was just kind of making a comment. Like I said, I was logging on just a tad bit after you guys started, but I also have a sub-grantee that was having a little bit of trouble trying to get Fannie Mae to accept an offer on a house. And it seemed like Fannie just wasn't really willing to accept the appraised value of the home offer that the city put forth.
Well, it's I don't really understand the motivations and some of these property holders, and servicers. You might want to look at the First Look program, and even if the property wasn't listed through them, they have had more experience dealing with some of these bigger seller servicers, and they know some little tricks, or may know somebody better to go to, or however that works. You can get to First Look through our website someplace, but I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Here they are sitting on all this real estate, and here you are trying to buy some of it from them, and they still won't take it. So, if you're, it was an issue, a bigger issue earlier on when we had a 5 or 15% discount requirement. But even a 1% discount, it's tough if it's foreclosed property. Now, if it's not foreclosed property, you don't have to get a discount, but I mean, I don't know how big of a deal 1% is. I think it's just their sort of mindset that and I think the banks are like this too. They kind of don't want to acknowledge the loss on these properties, and so as long as they can kind of keep telling themselves that it's worth something in their minds that is higher than in reality, then it's okay,
And that seems to be the issue, more or less. Faye doesn't really want to accept the appraisal after the city has already gotten two appraisals at the request of Fannie Mae because they keep saying, oh, that's just way too low. It's below their asking price. So I guess they don't really seem comfortable with accepting the offer. But I hope there was something else that I could tell them to do or somebody else to contact.
Yeah, we haven't figured it out, but I really do think you ought to talk to the First Look program. Have you worked through that at all? I mean, I think we're trying to look it up.
I'm actually going to send you a contact for Fannie Mae.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And look at First Look because they're an independent National Community Stabilization Trust. There's an independent organization that works with as a kind of intermediary between cities and states and counties that are trying to buy real estate and a lot of these big institutions who are sort of so big that it's just tough to get your hands around them. So I think that would be what I would do. I think that it's somebody with a little more expertise, maybe a little bit of leverage, and see if they could help you out with it. They're good people and they've been very effective.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And next up, we've got Edie. Hi, Edie.
Hi. Sorry I had you on mute. You caught me off guard. I'm the city of Minneapolis, and I want to go back to the donation and appraisal question, and my question's a little different. If one of developers is receiving a property as a donation, do they have to get an appraisal before they accept the donation, or can they accept the donation or pay $1 for it without an appraisal?
Well,
making them get appraisals.
Yeah, I think they're going to need an appraisal sooner or later, unless they don't want to get anything for it. Maybe they don't. But assuming they would like to get something, or the program would like to get something for, and I think they would need an appraisal by the time that they do their development budget and sell the house. And it's going to be appraisal as of the time they start construction. So, why not now? I don't know. I don't know. The downside is, I guess, they're going to be stuck with a property that they paid $1 for that they can't get rid of, or something like that. What's the arguments against doing it that way? You're
thing against getting an appraisal. We're just telling them in order to meet the SP guidelines, they have to have an appraisal prior to closing or prior to acceptance of the final offer. And they're saying, well, it's a donation, so we don't need an appraisal at that point, but we'll get an appraisal later.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One is if the property is less than $25,000 in value, then you can get something like a broker's price opinion. I would say that I wouldn't. They don't have to get the appraisal except to establish the value for the sale of the property. So, in our minds, because you're not paying for it, the whole of getting an appraisal for the NSP property is that you establish a basis for the discount, and that only applies to foreclosed properties. So, another piece of guidance that we're in the process of updating is the appraisal guidance for abandoned and vacant properties. Absolutely have to get an appraisal anyway. So I think it would be acceptable to, until they were a little farther down the road. Before you start construction, for example, but after you close, on the original, the transfer, or the donation transfer, or whatever.
In some cases, these are foreclosed properties where the lender is, for Minneapolis, a tornado spring, and some of those are just saying we don't want to put to them; they're too badly damaged. So we're just willing to donate them to a nonprofit for development purposes.
Right.
In some cases, they are foreclosures, and so I want to be sure we're not running afoul of the rigs.
Yeah, I think you're okay to defer that one those until you're a little farther down the line. I mean, because then if the property falls out or something, you've spent $300 for nothing or whatever you're paying for appraisals. But if if property's being donated, even if it was foreclosed, you can't hit a discount. I mean, you've already got the discount. It's 100%. So.
Incentive appraisal. I think that was in the bridge notice.
Yeah.
We said if it's under $25,000.
And under $25,000, you don't need one at all. But even if it's over $25,000, you don't. If the price is zero, not asking. If you're not selling it for anything, then you don't really need the appraisal at that stage. And I don't think it hurts you. But if they'd rather delay it for another couple months until they're at their costs and everything, that there's no problem with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks, E. Let's go to Stephen. Hi, Stephen.
Hi.
Hi.
Doing well, thanks. Where are you from?
I'm working with an organization in New Jersey, and just to know, I want some clarification about vacant properties being utilized in NSP.
Okay.
And those vacant properties, can it be vacant properties redeveloped under NSP? It can be redeveloped under eligible use B, or do they have to be redeveloped under eligible use E?
Now, what do you think the advantage of eligible use B is for a vacant property?
The decision is that the city has both vacant properties, abandoned properties, and foreclosed properties, and so they wanted to put all of the money into one eligible use as opposed to having it broken down into eligible use B and E. The reason being is that as they're going through this, some properties that are under development are costing more than properties, and so if a property that would be redeveloped under eligible use B was costing more than one that's being developed under eligible use E, and being some save there, to move that money, it would require a substantial amendment as opposed to just being able to look at these as one project.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, let's start at that point first. I mean, it's not necessarily true that taking funds from one budget line, eligible use to another it triggers an amendment. I mean, if you're still doing the same thing and you're just kind of doing it in different categories, we have not been, particularly, difficult about, considering that sort of a local amendment. I mean, you should still probably publish it, but it doesn't require an approval process. And unless it's NSP2, you don't have to go through HUD. I mean, you have to notify HUD, but there's no approval required. So
no, this is NSP1.
Right. So let me get to the fundamental question. Eligible use E is a much better category to be in. I mean, if you're going to spend all your money in an eligible use, E is the place to be because you could do new construction there. You only have to be vacant. To be eligible use B property, you have to be foreclosed or abandoned, and so you can't. You have these restrictions on you that you have in eligible use E. The caveat is that the property has to be vacant. So if all properties are vacant and you want to do something in only one category, then I would put it all in E. On the other hand, I mean, what's like I said, I don't know that there's that big of a deal between having a couple of different entities. You write an application. The city writes its application, or the county, and in 2 years ago, and then they come and find a whole different conditions a year later. So we've been trying to be flexible within the intent of the law, to allow them shifts in strategy without putting people through a lot of extra bureaucratic gyrations. But even if there are some gyrations, I would think they'd be relatively minor. So suggest that your T contact the Newark office and talk to the people there, and if they can't agree on something or come to some decision, we can get involved with them. We talk to folks up in Newark all the time, so they're pretty good at solving problems.
So for the NSP funds to be used for vacant but not foreclosed property, it would have to be in use E.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. But you could have a vacant, foreclosed property or a vacant abandoned property and treat them under E also. It's just not the other way around. So.
What about foreclosed properties?
For
the 25% low-income set-aside?
Well, that's a different cut. But I mean, if they're vacant, you can still treat them under use E.
And they meet the 25% low-income set-aside.
Well,
we changed the 25% income set-aside so that any one of the three types of properties.
Right. That's true. Yeah, I know. All these things that used to drive us crazy 2 years ago. There's no restriction on that anymore.
When you did in the April 9th notice?
We did
in the statute.
We did in Dodd-Frank, and so just last August, and so it's the October 19th, 2011, or no.
Okay. So now my next question is, if this city has put all of their NSP money, NSP 1 and NSP 3, in eligible use B, is requiring a substantial amendment to move it back to eligible use E?
That's what I'm saying. Not necessarily.
What program is this? 1, 2, or 3?
1 and 3.
1 and 3.
Right. So what you want to focus in on are the three things that trigger an amendment, right? Just going from E to E or E to B doesn't necessarily trigger an amendment. Things that would are change in geography, change in activities,
beneficiaries,
change in beneficiaries, right? Those are the things you want to hone in on.
Right, but you're working in the same general, you're working in the designated target areas, and the general, population you're serving is the same, and you've just decided that you're going to go from, let's pick a different example, from ownership to rental. That does not matter to us.
That's not a HUD issue.
That's not an amendment.
Okay.
Issue. So if you want to switch from B to E or from E to B or from C to D, none of that is really stuff that if it doesn't affect the bottom line, it's not an amendment.
Okay.
I mean, you have to change it locally, but I mean, it's not something that you have to come to us for.
Okay. You have to HUD for it.
No.
So when it doesn't require a substantial amendment.
No, I mean, there's a local amendment, but even the kind of things you're talking about there are I do not think are even local amendments. We always advise people to publish because, it's basically an electronic publication, and there's no point in antagonizing your beneficiaries, by not telling them what's going on. But other than that, it's not that's just good. That's just business, you don't want to frustrate your customers, but beyond that, we looking at the sort of the legal requirements, the beneficiaries, the location, the types of properties, if all those things are still eligible and you're still you haven't made major changes there, how you get to those people and those areas really is up to you.
Okay.
It is tighter in NSP2. But,
now this is an NSP2. I haven't been working with that. So.
Yeah, but even in NSP2, you can do amendments. It's a more it's a process. But I would advise you to together with the grantee and let's say City X and get on a three-way call with the Newark field office, and if necessary, they can call us and get involved. But by large, things that don't affect the bottom line of your program, don't affect the beneficiaries, don't affect the location, don't affect the sort of general outcomes that you've predicted, are strategic changes, not substantial amendments.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Thanks, Steve. Is up next, but except you don't have a phone icon next to your name, so I can't unmute you. So if you'd take a moment to submit that question in writing, that'll work. And while we're waiting to see what other questions there are, let me remind you of upcoming NSP webinars. We've got a slew of them, right, scheduled into April. And there they are in the dates, and you can learn more about all of these, of course, on the NSP Resource Exchange website. And go to the Learning Center. Also review that this webinar is being recorded, and that a copy of the recording, along with the transcript and the few slides that there are, will be posted in the archive, and that usually happens quite quickly, just a day or two. These have all been questions so far. As usual, people are on ball and thinking hard and well about NSP and their involvement with it. So questions, go ahead and submit them. And perhaps Lana will submit hers. Anything going on at headquarters?
So we have an incredible event going on right here with Jenny Hanforth Comas walked in and said that she has nothing to say. This is a lot of the conversation. She said, "I'm jet lagged from coming back from Texas." So mark that on your calendars, ladies and gentlemen. But we actually just moved, and it was a little more exciting than we were expecting, because we moved back into a building that was renovated, and they didn't bother testing the ventilation system before they put the guinea pigs back into the maze here. So the last week was a little bit strange, but we still survived, and actually it's been nice having. So the SP team is together for the first time in the same location, which is really nice, and that we're enjoying that proximity and convenience of that.
We're already starting to regret letting them sit near each other.
Right. Well, too late, honey. Yeah. So anyway, so Jesse, we had a question from Florida, from a sub-grantee of the state that ends up having admin money left. They're not getting any program income, and they'd like to sort of be able to hold on to that to monitor projects in the future, but it's not kind of situation where they had were treated as program income. They've never drawn it down. They don't have program income, and so the question is do you think we're going to have a way to enable that? I mean, if they were to, for example, use it on a project and make it program income, would that give them any more flexibility in how they could treat that after a grant closeout?
Well, one of the things that we have to deal with in grant closeout and in writing that policy is the long-term affordability, because it's actually the law puts the responsibility on the Secretary of HUD to maintain NSP properties as affordable for the maximum period feasible. And setting aside how Florida may have structured how they gave the sub-grant, which I'm not familiar with. I go the straight state CDBG way, but I'm not sure. We have several options. One is we can just hold the grant open until affordability periods are ended. We cannot do that because we won't have all of our term employees and additional help, and nobody wants to keep doing QPRs forever. We can play at closeout for funds that have been drawn and back around again, to be treated. But one of the criteria for grant closeout is that the grantee has drawn all the grant funds it's going to draw. You can't fund in advance of need even at closeout, with one exception involving litigation. So, yeah, you really need to sit and think right now. If you don't get that money drawn for something legitimately before closeout, it will just go away. NSP 1 or NSP 3, HUD may be able to reallocate allocate it. That would open the again, so that'd be kind of pointless from our point of view. So we've been scratching our heads to figure out how to deal with long-term affordability and admin. And the easiest solution is if there's a state, whether each individual grantee has program coming in, but if the state has program income coming in, that increases the amount they can spend on admin, and it keeps bringing in a trickle of admin that they can then keep using on long-term affordability. And it's something that states and for the larger urban counties, and to some extent the NSP2 consortium members. Consortiums we're going to have to figure out. It's a puzzle that we haven't completely picked through. So far as I've been able to tell, there's nothing analogous in any other federal grants. If somebody out there knows of something that would be analogous, if you could let us know, that would be awesome. Because I believe in plagiarism. But we right now are looking at a situation where we follow the CDBG regs about closeout. And one of the triggers is you have expended from your line of credit all you are going to expend, or you've hit a hard statutory deadline.
Right. In this case, I mean, because I was sort of assuming that most grantees have program income, but they've worked through developers, and the developers are retaining the proceeds and so forth, and that's fine. So in this case, they may not even be able to draw them before next spring when they're required to be expended. So I mean, I think we're kind of coming back to this, looking at ways to, find a small project to use that money, and then, have it, at least get it, out of the line of credit and back into your account as program income. I think you're going to be better positioned. But I think, like I said, we'll have guidance. We'll have this out in the next couple of months, and I think you'll still have time to plan for it, and not be running crazily at the end. So
we'll give everybody plenty of lead time. We're not going to close out any grant in a way that leaves anybody in the lurch. One of the predecessor programs at CDBG that we're actually referencing for a lot of this was a renewal, which had a closeout that still continues to this day in some cases. What we are looking at for the properties that you're holding and for revolving funds and other stuff is if you're a direct CDBG grantee from HUD state or an entitlement, we're building an area of IDIS where we'll maintain a limited information that you have to add, but a registry essentially of the properties that you're holding and of program income that's still revolving or that you receive. Because if you're a CDBG grantee and you receive NSP program income, it's going to keep its characteristics pretty much in perpetuity, or until CDBG is finally axed, which is going to happen, right, gang?
It's going to die of boredom.
Yeah. So for straight entitlements and states, we pretty much know the route that this is going to take. We're still ironing out the details and rulemaking, so we can't actually get into the weeds deeply on that. For the entitlements and the nonprofit-led consortia, we're still picking our way through exactly how this is going to work. If there's any states out there that want to weigh in with suggestions, we're also definitely open to that, how you would approach this.
Yeah.
I see the portfolio problem. I don't think that states should leave individual non-entitlement, program participant out there trying to figure this out on their own. You really need a solution for your state that's peculiar to the kinds of programs that you ran in your market.
Any other questions, Ken?
A number of questions have come in, and let's start with Mark. Mark?
Yeah, SP3, is it possible under redevelopment for a subgrantee to reimburse for property previously owned, eligible property?
Not usually. I mean, the way that we handle that, and it's in one of the early policy alerts called acquisition and rehabilitation, is that you get reimbursed when you sell it or refinance finance it. But
if it's a long-term rental that we own.
Well, so here's part of the problem is that you can't, you already own it. You couldn't have done an environmental review on it, and it's too, and
Correct.
you already made that choice limiting action by buying it or get donated to you. So it's hard for us to kind of back into an eligible, acquisition or reimbursement for something like that. So you can do an environmental review just on the rehab that you plan to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going to hold it, you could put a on it and take that out through a mortgage.
But that's currently how we have it designed.
Yeah. So that'd be the way.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. And let's go now to Leanne. Hi, Leanne.
Hello. Hello?
Hi. Yeah.
I'm fine. This is the state of Kansas once again. This is not a DRGR question.
Okay.
That's the good. Oh, no kidding.
That's gonna hit me.
No. DRGR. I'm trying to get some money scraped up for DRGR to spend some money and after the release in April and clean up the screen flow. So because we've been rushing to add capabilities to it, and I think we need a professional to go through the screen flow, but I'm still scrabbling around for the money that it'll take to do that.
I'm still doing workarounds, but hey, but surely I get it in there.
All right.
My question though, program income. We have program income. And we keep reallocating it and reallocating it out, so it's not just sitting here. That's the great news for our state. However, in 2013, we still have program funds unspent because you have to program income first. Are we going to be forced to close down, and how is that going to work?
Well, let me get bank account number. Yeah, well, that's one of the other big questions we're going to deal with. You have a really game, change in program everything and procedures. I can't, I think we're going to find a way to figure it out, because you've actually spent that money. You've just spent it in the form of program income that didn't allow you to get to the money that's in your line of credit.
That's what the notice requires. So yeah, the answer for NSP1 and NSP3 is actually fairly clear. It's going to be we will use the grant account line of credit itself when you have expended all you are going to expend from the line of credit. That doesn't mean you aren't going to come under fairly heavy pressure as you near the funding deadline to find a way to get that done. But we're very happy about the program income that's being earned, particularly by states. And so the notice says if the amount of funds plus program income has to be equal to or greater than the amount of the grant that you were originally given. It's an accident that we wrote it that way. The only reason there's any hesitation on saying that the same thing will play through for NSP2 is it was in the Recovery Act. The Recovery Act has a very clear expectation expressed from the people who passed the law and the people who asked for it, that the line of credit will actually be expended. We do not write our rule that way, and it doesn't actually say that for NSP2, but it's one of the only places that the Recovery Act does not say that. It is actually inconsistent with almost every other program.
So one of the things that we've been advising for grantees in your situation is to set up some revolving loan funds or other funds that allow you to take the program income and reallocate it as you're doing now, but outside, but separate from your regular line of credit. So those funds are segregated into one account, and they have to be spent for the next activity of that type. When you get a different type, let's say that's activity type A, then you get a request for activity type B, you can draw that down from your line of credit. So that, in effect, you're sort of...
Oh, see, we kept our program income in general account.
Yeah, you can change it.
We kind of don't want to because with all our different sub-recipients, that would be a bookkeeping nightmare that we probably couldn't keep up with, and we would have to make estimates. If I was inaccurate in the end, that's another nightmare.
Are you doing mostly single family is why?
Yes.
Because a lot of the RLFs we're seeing now that are getting started are for multifamily gap financing. And that means the money goes in big chunks out of the RLF, and it is a lot less keeping issue. And you can work with, have an HFA or whoever does tax credit. You might even be able to, arrange that the underwriting is done by somebody else. So we'll be doing more guidance around stuff like that as we see models emerge, but that's one of the things we're seeing emerge. I agree, it is much tougher to do with single family. I prefer a state where your actual, are very decentralized.
Right.
But about the game, while you're working on getting to the deadline, and then the long game, which is as long as CDBG lasts, NSP program income keeps coming in. One of the big questions for us, for someone like you, would be right now the overwhelming number of requests and interest that we've gotten from grantees have said that NSP program income should keep NSP eligibility and NSP characteristics. If we take no action, however, that program income under the current notices and regulations is going to be CDBG program income and receded to the CDBG program.
And in NSP?
It loses its NSP. It will revert to the 80% of median, but you will gain a whole lot of eligible activities. So we've made the decision, I believe, to have funds for at least some time keep their NSP characteristics. But if you have a point of view on that and want to, talk about it. I mean,
we have a lot of new NSP projects, I guess you could say, created through program income.
Right.
And so when you tell me this is going to be reverted back to CDBG.
Only if we take no action, but we're planning to take action.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to make it, sort of have the best of both programs.
Yeah, because I feel like, oh no, we're doing the right thing and we're going to get caught in a catch-22.
No, we're not going to catch anybody in a catch-22. That's the goal, is to avoid it. We know there are a few grantees out there that do want it to turn into CDBG.
I could see some value in that. I would like to take some of our program income, but not all of it, be allocated to CDBG, because we definitely could use it, especially in housing, for housing rehab and all kinds of housing initiatives going on in our state. Yes, because oil fracking is coming.
Well, the reasons that that stands the way it stands if we take no action is because really at the beginning of this, I wasn't about to try to rewrite the closeout rules. You know how NSP was going to play out, and nobody did. We couldn't write those rules yet. We're just now reaching the point where we can kind of see the end game emerging.
Okay, because right now, and I'm just approximating dollar amounts, we have a $5 million in program income, which left us with $4 million of unspent program funds, because again, you spend program income first.
The big answer is speed up.
As soon as we get it, we put it back out.
Right, no, but you need to, like the planning thing overall, look at how fast would you have to go, how much would you have to do, use just about double the amount you're using, so your outflow increases. Anticipating program income will keep flowing in at the rate it's flowing in, and you have to figure out a way to increase your outflow so you can drop in the line of credit.
Right.
LF is one mechanism for doing that, but it's not the only mechanism. You can just
units.
Yeah, recompete And another thing I've seen states do is run competitions before the money comes in, and tell the local governments, as the money comes in, stand ready. You know, and then you will constantly be picking up projects and moving them through. It's how much how well you think your local governments would be, how good they would be at standing ready. You don't have much of a choice. You're going to have to figure out a way to either make sure the program income doesn't keep coming at you as fast or to increase your outflow, and I think the latter is your better option.
I don't see it decreasing at this point. If anything, we still have, I see we're coming.
We were up over, we were around $500 million this week in program income from NSP. I mean, this is happening to everybody.
All right. Well, this is helpful.
It's either that or we forfeit the $4 million in program funds.
No,
keep going.
We're not going to go there. Well, this is helpful for us in, as we write these rules, and I think we'll try to, float around a bit before we public. So thanks for your input.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. And next is Deborah. Deborah?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. A question on that, might as well continue the program income conversation. We've not received any back to the state. We've got our grantees, and they, in turn, have developer agreements, and so some of the developers are keeping it at their level and also recycling it to do more projects. So we don't receive any back here. But am I going to have to, at some point, count whatever there is at the local level of true program income and report it in DGR, even though we've not received it back here?
If it's true program income, okay, so you just said developers, and developers can't, if they're true developers, they can't earn program income.
Correct. They're not, but some of them are actually a subrecipient because they're doing it themselves.
It is a subrecipient or recipient. It is program income, and yes, you're supposed to be reporting it in DRGR. Subrecipients are holding it and just turning it back around and not asking you for draws, then you just need to report it quarterly. Whatever. I assume you have at least quarterly reports coming back from your subrecipients.
Right now, they're just now starting to get those. They're being done, and they're going to really start having some resales now. So, do I report that in? I've heard conflicting things. Do I report that in a quarterly report where you have to create a receipt and all this?
Your funds and and you have a lot of choices here, and I'm not familiar enough with your particular situation to walk you, but we can walk you through this. But speaking as a manager, if you have a handful of subrecipients and you trust them,
just a case.
You can arrange for them to have rights in DRGR, and they can enter their information and just hit the save button, and you can proof it. Put entry on them and the proofing on you. You have to be sure they will not push the submit button. Now, if you can't fix it, you can, because you can call HUD and say, "Can you reject that for me?" But you have grantees who are doing that because they're in states or in urban counties where their council or their governor will not hire up, so have to use the recipients to do the data entry. We're willing to do that. We're careful about it, and we'll do it only at your recommendation, but it is a possibility to give them rights for your grant. That's one way. Another, for you to, and you have to set up the fund, right? So ideally, it's you crunch for each of those subs, and they're just receiving the money into their own fund. And you teach them how to do just that. You can do all the receipting yourself quarterly, and if you don't create sub-funds, it will drop into your general fund, and you will use it before you draw. Credit. Draw in air quotes from your program before you draw from your line of credit. Or you can create sub-funds, because this sounds like what you're actually doing, for your subrecipients, and you can do data entry for each of your subrecipients. You would receive the program to the activity that generated it, and you will draw for that responsible organizations' activities. That's what the fund does. It's by organization, is my understanding. Or you can create RLS and start making grant clawbacks or loans to additional organizations for a particular kind of activity.
We will have some more around the DRGR training this year nationwide, so hopefully you can get learning some of these advanced.
Can I just get a request say some DGR expert from HUD or whoever your technical assistance provider come up and just enter all in on a 3-day period and call it good?
No. I wish. That's what interns are for. No, we don't send the aid providers to just enter the data for you. However, for states, and this is an offer that really doesn't come into play until after April, because we have another release coming that deals with some audit issues that we need to deal with. For states and large urban counties with just a ton of activities, we can data correction for you. If you arrange things in a spreadsheet the way we need to see them, it is possible for us to do a data correction, and we've done a few of those for backlogs of this kind of information. You need to contact GR_help@HUD.gov with a CC to Mark Mitchell, and he can get you in the queue for that. But it still means some work for you because you're going to have to get it in a format where we're basically in an Excel sheet so we can just dump it straight into the right data field. So you still have to do the thought exercise and the funds.
How to collect the information.
Because
we're letting them keep the program income at their level.
Fine.
Right. And until you guys the program all over, and then it's all going to come back to us once you've figured out, I'm assuming CDBG or if it's NSP, whatever.
It'll be an NSP. It's an odd situation because right now it's actually CDBG. It's really actually CDBG funds with an NSP overlay anyway.
Right.
So it keeps some of the NSP things that we'll drop away from it just because we won't have the staff to enforce them.
But you also can, hire some bookkeepers or things like that to do it. I mean, it's not like free TA, but it's probably not that expensive.
You're earning program income, so
right.
Well, yet not here. We're not. See, that's the issue.
But somebody is, yeah.
Yeah, I got to figure out a way to report it in DR, like all at once. I'll have that. They can report to us and say, okay, give places that you sold, that you generate program income, and this will be, there'll be beneficiaries obviously in there.
Right.
But it'll be assured in this receiving sort of thing.
Yeah, we can give IDs for your subrecipients for a 2-month window if you want, and then turn them off also.
Really?
Yeah, you can turn their IDs off. The grant administrator can. Once you get D, you turn them on and you turn them off.
Oh, so that might be the better thing to go as we get close to where it's coming to end, and we can gather all their information and say, okay, here's a 2-month window where you're going to go in and enter in all your data for your per income.
It's not something I'd really thought about before, but yeah, the grant administrator has the ability to turn on and off IDs. In fact, they won't be able to see anything until you turn their ID on.
Well, I think I'll wait till you are, at the end of the program before you report all that.
Actually, I do because I think it'll be easier. We're 19.6, and all of that is going to.
Well, I would urge you to get the data in as soon as you can, simply because there is a proposal that's already been introduced in the House for what's effectively NSP4, and it's going to be introduced in the Senate. It's called Project Rebuild, and the more we can show we've done with this money, the better the case is, even though it's an extreme long shot anyway.
Regardless, I mean, we get congressional inquiries, and the secretary goes out and wants to know, what's happening in this state or whatever. So, if you've done a lot of things but you haven't reported any, then it doesn't look as good as as if you have.
Right.
So.
They get them in there. Okay.
I mean,
and then another quick question on resale.
Uh-huh.
Again, conflicting. I've steered people away from the real just because of the nature of our market. But if they're going to do a resale project where they, the home resale provisions,
uh-huh.
the total development cost, say they're doing 16 units, the total development cost of the 16 units is about $200 plus per unit, but the NSP investment per unit is about $100, say. They're selling those units at market rate somewhere a little bit over the $100,000 of NSP investment, and so they put in the resale provision that they can only sell to somebody at or below 120. No requirement to pay that back, but what if during that period of affordability they have to sell the property and they can't sell it to somebody at or below? What's the total NSP repayment liability? Is 100?
Yes, it'd be the NSP amount.
Okay.
But I mean, in that case, it sounds to me like you're talking about a development subsidy, which if it's $200,000 to build it and $100,000 to sell it, then and if you've got $100,000 in it, then that's all development subsidy, and nothing comes back. Resale doesn't generate payments. Resale says that the low price stays with the unit by virtue of you're having to sell it to a certain
right. What if they can't find the qualified person to buy it and they have to sell the property?
If you meet the requirement, you're in violation, and the amount you invested is the amount that comes back. It's not change of use.
Say that again?
We've been having a little debate in the background. If you can't meet the requirement for resale, it's akin to failing to meet a national objective, right? And
right.
So because you got a beneficiary problem.
Right.
So your investment has to come back to the program because there's nothing, we can't mitigate that without finding.
They'd have to pay the full 100 back.
Yeah.
See, here's the problem. They've gone out and got a mortgage. So the sale price is, say, $125.
Right.
They're 5 years into their 15-year reality period. They have some life-changing thing. They've got to sell it, and they can't find the eligible person, but they're a willing buyer, and they owe more than they have a mortgage, first mortgage, which eats all the equity.
That's why people do recapture. But
I know. Tell that to the developer who wants, their mission is to keep it perpetually affordable.
It's not about the person who owns the house who has to pay it back unless you structure your program that way. Our gallery is reminding us that it's the grantee on the hook.
Yeah, the grantee is always the one responsible.
Yeah, they can pay back more than they got in it, basically, So
home buyer is not in trouble.
Right. No.
I just got a much better leverage position in convincing them. They were prepared to say, well, tough. They'll be in trouble then.
No, we would hold you responsible.
Well, not hold them responsible.
Yeah, you can hold whoever you want responsible. We would hold you.
Got it. Okay. So and then of course now we're already into the first eligible person, and okay, so that clarifies that. All right. Thanks much.
Good luck.
Thanks, Deborah. And let's go back to Ann. Hi, Ann.
Hi. Okay, I've got a couple of questions, and I'm going to apologize because I can think of no good way to ask them. The first question I have, we budgeted, every 10% admin. We clearly are not going to spend 10% of our allocation on administrative expenses between now and the end of our grant period, especially because at this point all of our administrative expenses can be paid with 10% admin from program income. So here's a question. We funds that were otherwise budgeted for administrative expenses to the $3.7 million, and we send out the door on projects. The 10% admin cap based on the the overall allocation plus admin, and can we sort of, we have an accrual sitting somewhere, so those funds come back in. If we get $2 million back in theory, we would have $2 million back in of administrative funds, or we limited to $200,000 of that $2 million.
The grant calculation works for admin is that you may use up to an amount of for program income equal to 10% of your grant plus 10% of your program income. When you spend it, we speak to. So it's not like home where you set it aside in a fund and it's sequestered off. We actively encourage grantees to spend less than 10%. That's a cap, not an expectation.
My question is, we're going to need that admin fund in future years for long-term compliance.
Right. The amount is the amount. The amount is 10% of the grant plus program income.
Okay, so if we send out $2 million as project funding, we get $2 million back over a period of time in $100,000 chunks. If we need to, we can treat the entire $100,000 as admin.
If you need to, if that's the use you have, until you hit the amount.
Right.
That is 10% of the grant plus 10% of program income.
Right. And then, is there any prohibition against making forward commitments based on anticipated program income?
No, but we do urge urge caution, and we urge that you make them conditional.
Right.
Especially
okay.
Far forward, it can affect the environmental review.
Well, and now that you said environmental review, I've got a question also. I apologize. We are looking at particularly how we might do a revolving loan fund. If we do a revolving loan fund, we would see that as a finance mechanism. Therefore, we would limit its use to foreclosed residential properties only. Here's my question. Typically, a loan is exempt under environmental review. We are loaning funds, even though the use of those funds might be acquisition rehab, our RLF itself and the loaning of those funds, is that now an exempt activity? Because it would be a nightmare for us on 2 units here and 2 units there to comply with NEPA.
No, it is what it is, but no loan is ever exempt from environmental review. All CDBG assistance, no matter what form it flows in, is covered by some form of environmental review.
Well, I think it reverts to exempt.
Yeah, you can do converted exempt, but it's the activity, the AC rehab, that's converting exempt, not because it's a loan.
Oh, all right. So because I think a loan itself is considered exempt, but it won't work.
No, but it's got to be purely financing, and if you're acquiring it, then you're not purely financing it. So
we RLF are purely financing. It's the borrower.
Happen.
Yeah.
But we can't walk that on, I guess is what I'm hearing you say.
I wouldn't.
Well, you can put in a request for environmental TA, but I don't think that's accurate. The environmental training I had said it didn't matter what form the assistance went in. If it was going to cause rehab in a change limiting action, you had to do the review, and you can't. There's no way out of it. But most of them, my understanding is depends on the scale of your rehab, will be exempt or converted exempt. But it's going to carry on, and that goes for regular CDBG. NSP isn't any different.
Okay.
And the other thing that you said right at the beginning is that you consider an RLF a financing mechanism, and you're limiting yourself to foreclosed property.
Well, I like to do that.
We're
thinking about it.
Yeah,
go ahead.
You don't have to do that. An RLF, you can do less than regular CDBG.
It's part of that. It's part of rehab.
Yeah, it's part of rehab, so you can do rehab or new construction under NSP terms under more than one eligible use, so you have some additional property types if you wanted to use them there. And it's something that maybe right now you want to only do foreclosed property, but you might want to think about it at closeout what you want to do.
Is there, and I'm not saying we're going to, but were we to look at doing an RLF, we might set a minimum capitalization of $750,000 to $1 million as a reasonable jumping off point to actually start lending activities, which means that essentially it would probably take us to 12 months to actually have to receive and deposit income into the RLF account. Is there any problem with that money sitting there until we hit that, whatever that reasonable floor is to begin lending activity?
I mean, you have to do what's reasonable, but you have to put the RLF in an interest-bearing account, and you send any interest it earns back to the U.S. Treasury. You have to do that, and there's nothing we can do about it. So you want to set up a quarterly schedule while you're waiting for it to build up. It will earn interest just sitting there, and that interest doesn't belong to you according to the U.S. Treasury.
Okay. This might all be easier if the 100% expenditure were applied only to program funds and no allocation.
It would be set with you and set with us if we did that. They're earning so much program income they can't draw from their line of credit. They're jammed. And I can't change the OMB circulars that say program income has to be used before grant funds. That's a wide rule.
I think the NSP 100% expenditure requirement, if applied only to the program fund portion of folks' allocations.
No, but that's what I'm telling you. There's grants that can't pull. There are grantees who have not been able to pull from their program credit in quite some time because they're earning so much program income so fast.
That's worse than what you're saying. Look, I'm looking in the 58 here, and it looks like, a lot of the stuff that you're probably doing of under 4 units and, not changing the density and so forth is a categorical exclusion it's only subject to, like, historic preservation and floodplain, a couple of those things. So it might not be that unworkable if you're doing modest scale projects. I don't know. But I got to say, I like that picture I saw, that multifamily project that you did that's on our website. Really nice looking.
We're actually going to Leeds. They're doing 6 units, so stay tuned. We appreciate it.
Good.
And there's a question here. When does the NSP1 program end?
NSP1?
Yeah.
It's such an odd question. I would suspect maybe 20 or 30 years from now. The NSP1 grant agreement and in the notice, it says that there's a deadline that's in 2013. It's a 4-year deadline for expenditure and amount of your grant. Actually, I don't pull the notice to tell you exactly what it says, but that's when the deadline is. But it's a notice deadline and a grant agreement deadline. It is not a statutory deadline. So, we could theoretically entertain waivers. We think 4 years is long enough, though, and NSP1 grantees should be expended the amount they need to expend. We cannot close out a grant until the parties are occupied and a national objective is met. And we know that could take some time afterwards. And we also know that there are some grantees who are getting complicated program income and property, real estate positions that take some time for us to understand and unwind and to a closeout agreement. So I anticipate that the majority of NSP1 grantees are going to close over the course of the next 18 months, and that we will have a few that stay open. I can't even predict as manager. Some of those programs are interesting and arcane. So our goal is to close as many as we possibly can legally before we lose our term employees when our funding runs out. And that would be about for 2013?
9/30.
For most of, not all of it, but most of our funding runs out then. We have our backs to the wall in terms of quality of service we can provide. We can keep TA providers somewhat longer than that. But.
Good.
So SP1 and SP2 are at ending in the same quarter, basically.
Yeah. One's in March, one's in
2013.
All right, so now let's go to Lisa's question, and she asks, we're spending a line of credit and program income to reach our grant amount. Will we have access to unspent funds in the line of credit after the end of the grant?
Yes.
Do we? And this is, you've been talking about this. Do we need to create an LF to stash the program income?
You will have access to the line of credit until, absent major audit findings or anything, until we actually sign a closeout agreement. And then we will shut the line of credit off.
So as they spent the amount, it doesn't have to all spend out of the line of credit. Right?
Exactly. That's where we were standing. And somebody got the NSP1 notice because I wasn't quite as sophisticated at the time I wrote that one. I got clever on the NSP2, but I'm pretty sure that's what it says. It's actually in the unified notice, right? Did it alternate it? A copy of the NSP1 notice is truly frightening. It feels like old parchment. It's been handled so much.
Little dark.
Yeah, very. And kind of raggedy edges. And, I'm just going to take a look because people are really asking about this. So let's see what we have.
So while you're looking, let me go to Sarah's question, which is if remaining funds are reverted to CDBG, how will that apply to a consortium?
Well, it's going to be a little different with consortia, so we don't really know that yet. Obviously you have multiple there. Some consortia have a unit of government as the member. Some have a unit of government as not the lead member. I don't know. We've really did the lead members as the grantee, so I don't know if there's going to be a way for us to say, well, this which was just a member of the consortium is now going to have be the source of and the location of all the program income. I don't know. It's hard for me to figure out. I just don't see that.
Okay. Another question. The NSP1 grantees must expend eligible NSP activities an amount equal to or greater than the initial allocation of NSP1 funds within 4 years of receipt of those funds, or HUD will recapture and reallocate the amount of funds not expended. In missing the clause that we added for NSP2 and NSP3 that says, or provide for other corrective actions or sanctions, if you hit the 4 year and haven't hit the amount of grant plus program income, we leave ourselves no option but to recapture for NSP1. For NSP2 and 3, NSP2 grantees have learned passing the 2 year. We left some room on the 2 year for other corrective actions or sanctions, and we're considering it. So the amount of grant plus program income. Once you've passed that, there isn't an additional expenditure requirement, but we will be coming to you because we have a staffing problem coming and an ability to support the grants and saying, people ask the money in a line of credit for a legitimate project. Let's work on getting that done so we can move you to close out. Because we are assuming as a matter of course that nobody wants to let this money go. And you don't have any more need and you would be happy for us to take the money for N1 or 3 and reallocate it, let us know. There's plenty of grantees who call us all the time saying, you got any money to reallocate?
So I think Jesse might have made a statement that slightly
Did I do something wrong?
Yeah, well, you said the amount of the grant plus program income.
Plus right.
So we have to spend the amount of the grant.
The amount of the grant from program funds plus program income. Sorry, I knocked that wrong. Okay. You're right.
Just don't want people thinking they have.
And John had me speechless, and I made a mistake in one day. I really am jet lagged.
I'm telling you, I should have left speechless. So. You see that she's recovered, ladies and gentlemen.
And let's go to Jennifer. Jennifer?
Hi. I had just written in a question. Just wanted to confirm that this 25% set aside is still applicable to the amount of program income generated.
Yes. We have not,
okay.
For NSP2, we have not made that requirement yet, but we will. So,
it wasn't computed. We still have to work on that one with the lawyers.
Okay.
103, yes, it is applicable to income earned after October 18th.
Right. Okay. For a state grantee, not receiving back program income, and so we're going to figure out how to keep that amount then.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Supposed to be state on the open forum.
Thanks, Jennifer. And let's see, are there any other questions? I see none at this moment. So once again, remind you that the archive will be posted if you want to go back and listen to any of this or read it in the transcript or refer other people to it. That'll be posted. Usually it just takes a couple days to get that on the Resource Exchange. Again, a whole slew of webinars scheduled right now with more on the way. So you can always check back at the Resource Exchange in the Learning Center under webinars to see what's been added and get more information on all of these.
So everybody out there who, is an NSP temporary employee of some form and wondering what you're going to do when NSP does end, I found out today that the unemployment rate in Minot, North Dakota is 2.7%. If you can stand there and breathe, they will pay you to do something.
To drill.
You get a bonus for signing on at McDonald's.
So when you do leave today's webinar, you'll be automatically redirected to a survey form, and we'd appreciate it if you take a moment to fill it out. We'd love to know your comments about today's webinar and your thoughts about what we ought to do in the future. Written comments are particularly appreciated. And I'd like to thank all our panelists, John, David, Hunter, and of course Jesse, the walk-in. And thanks to Walter Howell, who was there on the sidelines, but there anyway. Good. So thank you all, and we look forward to seeing you soon on another HUD NSP webinar.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ken.